All right, welcome to a podcast episode today, but it's not going to necessarily be a supply chaining podcast episode. I've been thinking, and I've realized that while there's many professionals and experts in supply chain out there that I enjoy talking to, and I bring them on to the supply chaining podcast to chat with them, what I realized is that I've got a soft spot in my heart for students. I still feel like I'm a student. I guess in some ways I am as well. But I really wanted to make sure that the future voices of the supply chain industry have a place to kind of come on and share their stories. And I want to kind of make sure they get out there. One, to give those students an opportunity to have a little bit of a platform and chat. But I think the other thing is that it's really beneficial for the professionals in the industry that are hiring these students coming out of school or whatnot, to kind of just get an idea of like what students today want to do, what expectations they have when they enter the supply chain industry as a career path. And I think I also want to try to make sure that for high schoolers that are trying to decide what they want to study when they go off to college, possibly if they choose that career path, that they can hear kind of like from students that have been in it, or if you're an early college, like a freshman, sophomore, doesn't know exactly what to major in. I want to try to help them decide that supply chain is where it's at. So that's really the idea here, right? And so Hannah, who I met some months ago. It's a funny story. Maybe we'll get into it later on in the chat. But Hannah's just one of those people that has 120% amount of passion and energy for the industry. She does find herself actually working in the industry at the moment, but also full-time student as well. I think transitioning from sophomore to junior year sort of thing right now. And so she kind of represents this hybrid of someone that's in the industry a bit already working, but also is actively engaged in a student and working full-time job and going to school full-time at the same time, which kudos to you. You're amazing and an inspiration. So that's really where we're at here. So we're going to give this a shot. Right now, working title is Future Voices of Supply Chain. I want this to kind of be its own little series and just see if we can do something cool here. So Hannah, thanks for being the guinea pig and coming on board and chatting with us today. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Well, like you said, I think you made a great point whenever you said sometimes you feel like a student too. Because sometimes, right, whenever you think about college, you think about school, you think about someone who is like a freshman, or straight out of high school. But we're all really never not learning, right? No matter where we are in our lives, we're always at some point of learning. And whenever you're actually doing it academically, there's that pressure that comes with, getting good grades and making sure that you're applying what you're actually spending day to day researching and things like that. But it's really exciting to have the opportunity to work in the industry that I'm studying in.
Sure.
Because sometimes, I've been in school since I graduated high school. And I remember whenever I first started, I wanted an English degree. I love speaking, I love writing, and I love English a lot. So that was my initial goal, was to get an English degree. And then move forward. I never wanted to be a teacher. I kind of more so wanted to maybe get into technical writing or something like that. But it's just so funny how my career, I was super blessed to start my career really early. And I got to kind of have the career start first. So school kind of went on the back burner. And now I'm confident in my career and confident in what I want to do with the rest of my career. And now I get to kind of put that energy into my degree. So as I'm studying, I just get this awesome opportunity to have a real world example of exactly what I'm learning. So I'm in a strategic sourcing class.
Mm-hmm.
I strategic source all the time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's so cool to have these, like, this is the book. These are professionals of, I think you had mentioned earlier, 50 plus years in the industry. And I get to glean some of that wisdom. And then, the assignments are always like, write a 1 to 2 paragraphs, explaining why you agree or disagree. And I get to just go wild. I get to
Yeah.
totally talk about what I think and what I feel, and then actually get accredited feedback on that. So it's a really cool thing to be doing.
I can sympathize a bit because in my MBA classes right now, if I'm taking like an entrepreneurship type of class or whatever, I get to literally talk and answer papers prompts using my exact thing I'm doing right now, right? And refer back to it. And a lot of the
Yes,
things I'm studying in
exactly.
class, I'm deploying and using in my day-to-day sort of role of what I'm trying to do with supply chaining. So that's really awesome for you
It's
to
like
be
a
able to get
cheat
to do
code.
that. Hmm.
Yeah, it's like a cheat code for like how to learn and grow at the same time. It's super fun.
That's so cool. So let's back up just a hair and tell us about your sort of roots a little bit, and then let's walk up to school choice, how you decided not to do English, and then kind of that choice
Okay.
to do supply chain.
Yeah, awesome. So, like you said, my name's Hannah. I'm actually from East Texas. I'm one of those really cool people who have a 903 area code. So I've had it since I was 16. I plan on
Yeah.
just keeping it. Got it memorized now for all my rewards points and stuff. But yeah, I grew up in East Texas. I have a sister, and my family of four. I was actually homeschooled. So my mom taught me every single day. And so
Wow.
I feel really blessed for that as well, because I know a lot of the times whenever you talk about homeschooling in the past, right, sometimes that was a little bit neglected, right? Like you weren't actually schooling.
Yeah.
My mom sat every single year and wrote our curriculum, and there was not a day that went by that I didn't have some sort of example that she would tie into our day. That we also tied into school. And she saw that I did really well in English. So I remember there were some years where I hardly did any English schoolwork, and she worked with me on math. And then I was able to
Uh-huh.
excel in math, and then she was able to pick it back up. So I had a lot of people pouring into me from the very beginning of my life. My parents always told me, that I could do anything that I set my mind to.
Hmm.
And then, of course, I have a really strong relationship with the Lord and with Jesus Christ. And so I just feel very impacted by the blessing that I felt on my life from him. And so I just feel very, very grateful for all the opportunity I've had. In the way that as an adult, I've seen him more and more, and I kind of just get to live my life trying to be better.
Awesome. And then so you did this homeschool thing, which is awesome. I didn't know that
Yes.
about you actually, so thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So you did that, and then you're like, okay, here comes the big world. I'm gonna maybe go do
Yeah,
English,
exactly.
but yeah, how did that pivot happen?
Well, so I started making money whenever I was 17, and I was like, this is awesome. Like, you're telling me I can work and I can get cash? This
Uh-huh.
is great. I loved it. So I waitressed for a few years through high school. And then, of course, I just felt like I wanted more, like I wanted to start a career. I wanted to make more money. I wanted to have more
Mhm.
opportunity. And so I actually started working at a water bottle plant in Hawkins. So I started working for a really big water bottle company, working 12-hour shifts, hard hat, steel toe boots. I remember I came
Ah,
back from my first shift and my heels were bruised. I'd never walked that much in my life
yeah.
and been on my feet that much, but I loved it. I'm running
Wow.
oh my gosh, we'd run like 1,000 water bottles a minute. So I'd
Uh-huh.
come at the end of my 12-hour shift and I've ran 1.2 million water bottles. And it was just so fulfilling to know that what I was spending my time every day was something that also impacted someone's life. And I talk about this almost to every ear that will listen, but just about how the very first managers that I had really sculpted me into the person that I'll be for the rest of my life, because I was excited and I was passionate and I was 18, and they absolutely gave me all the groundwork to keep that passion, and they just poured so much into me. Every single manager that I had was just so complimentary and actually gave me hard tasks,
Mhm.
really, really hard tasks. And I was able to take that and decide that for the rest of my career, I just wanted to try and fix things. So, like one of the first tasks that I had at the water bottle plant was taking one of our changeover procedures, and I rewrote it. So I was one of the key members. So just completely rewrote the process. I shaved 2 hours off, and it was such a big deal. We were able to get a certain water bottle size back in Hawkins. And I just remember how great that felt, how amazing that felt, and how much that I wanted to care about everything that I did. And then from there, I received a promotion to raw material planner. And it's hilarious because at that time I had no idea what that was, right? Like
Uh-huh.
I had a little bit of an idea, of course, from the interview, but if you had asked me what supply chain was at that point, all that I knew was that I cared enough to make it work. And then I got into the role and absolutely fell in love with it. I mean, something that I learned very quickly was that, nobody really knows your name unless you're in trouble.
Hmm.
And then if something's missing, everybody's gonna know your name and they're
Uh-huh.
gonna
Uh-huh.
figure out where it is and how they're gonna get it. So I kind of got a taste of what it's like to be a guy in the background and to only, have everything that I do day to day kind of happen in the background.
Yeah.
And I find a ton of fulfillment in that, knowing that I'm a piece of why the world works.
Hmm. So what did that raw material planning incorporate? Like, just make sure you had the like the raw materials that are going into the production, and that you had an adequate stock of it,
Yeah,
talking to
well, like I
suppliers
said,
and all
yeah,
that sort of
like
stuff.
you're doing 1.2 million bottles a day per line. Like my plants that I was over two plants. So we would run about 10 million bottles per day. And so like I mean I still drink it, right? So I have a water bottle right here in front of me and it's like
Yeah.
I ordered the caps, I ordered the labels, I ordered all the plastic pellets that went into the water bottle, the case pack, the cardboard, like every single thing that went into the water bottle, I
Uh-huh.
purchased for the two
Wow.
plants. So, I mean, I would place purchase orders that were millions and millions of dollars just on a day to day basis. And
As
we
like
ran
an
really lean.
18-year-old, as a
Like a
17,
19-year-old. Yeah, I was
19-year-old? Yeah.
19. And it
Wow.
was it was a big deal in the organization because everybody was like, why is this child in
Yeah. Yeah.
charge of all of these things? But like I said, I had people who believed in me and I had the demeanor and the personality that I think I'll
Sure.
have for the rest of my life, where it's like I will get it done. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I have. So I mean, it's not something that I've ever taken lightly. And I learned so much. Oh my gosh, I learned so much. Like I said, I had an attention to detail very early on. And I definitely attribute that to my mom because I remember my mom being super detailed on my life and just kind of explaining to me why little things mattered. So I had an attention to detail. It was just kind of understanding procurement because even though it was a raw material planner, it was procurement, right? I
Yeah.
purchased, I placed purchase orders, negotiated with, I actually didn't do any negotiating like strategic sourcing. Mine was like placing a purchase order,
Yeah.
pushing things out, pulling things up as
Hmm.
needed. So that's where the planner came in, because we would customize it basically to the pull of my plants. Um, but I learned so much, especially around like communication, speaking with people. Every single place that I've ever been blessed to be has been growing, just so much growing, so much learning.
Yeah.
And that's actually where my passion really began because I started to realize how supply chain specifically is so vast, right? Like, yes, I was a raw material planner, but there's so many other facets of supply chain. It's never boring.
Hmm.
And whenever you have like a little bit of understanding of one piece of it, it's kind of the same, you just plug it in differently. So, and by
Hmm.
that I mean industry. Like whether I started out in food and beverage and I've been in food and beverage for 4 years. And then my one right now that my current endeavor is retail tech, right? And you're like, what do those things have in common? Supply chain.
Hmm.
Supply chain is what's in
Yeah.
common because even though the application's different, the core stays the same. And so once I started getting to understand that, and understanding all the opportunity that comes with ways that you can make the supply chain better, it just thrilling, absolutely thrilling. I love what I do.
And you loved it enough to say this is what you wanted to study in school. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about like picking where to study, how to go about that, and work at the same time, and like kind of talk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I started out kind of wanting to do English, loving words, right? That's always been a consistent thing for me. And I just decided in 2022, whenever I moved here to Allen, so now I live north of Dallas instead of living in East Texas. So I moved for work, worked for an amazing company for 2 years. And it really gave me the space and the opportunity to, I think I'm going to go full time. I think I'm going to go in person. And I think I'm going to really step up my game and get these degrees taken care of. Because again, I started looking at it as not so much of this thing that I should already have, but instead this type of learning that's actually going to make me better. That's where the shift to supply chain went because I remember initially wanting to do something different than what I worked in because I thought that it would be really exhausting to do supply chain all day, come home, and then do supply chain. Right. So that was another reason I actually did a semester in interior design, right? Because I was thinking art. right? I
Mhm.
was like, okay, I can work supply chain, then I can come home and do art.
Yeah.
And it was a great semester. It just, interior design wasn't quite the right fit for me. And I was like, what am I doing? Why am I questioning my fit? I
Mhm.
obviously love supply chain. I obviously find it very enthralling to be a part of. And then I started discovering how I can actually take the textbook and the things that I'm learning and apply it immediately. So I've been full time ever since 2022. I'm a very proud alum of Collin College. Collin College was awesome to me. Absolutely loved that school. Their supply chain professor, Professor Greg Carter, probably going to be the best professor I've had. We'll see. I still have a lot more learning left to do, but that guy was awesome. And so Collin College had a wonderful program, and I was able to attend classes at night after work, which was a big change, right? Where it was like, instead of coming home and, maybe just doing laundry or clothes or something like that, washing dishes, it's like, I have to study. And I did get into a system though, right? Where I was used to it. And I was like, all right, it's like this part of my life that I'm very grateful for. I know a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do school at the same time that they work. And a lot of
Mhm.
people don't have the opportunity to work yet, right? Like that's a huge blessing that I have. So I've been full-time since 2022. Currently full-time at East Texas A&M University. And so one of the cool things about that is they recently changed their name. It used to be Texas A&M University Commerce.
Yep.
And whenever they changed it to East Texas A&M University, it's like I felt that calling. I was like, oh, well, I'm from East Texas. How
Yep.
cool is
Yep.
that to kind of tie in where I'm from to where I study? And they have a wonderful program online. So I feel really comfortable in my balance of work and life and school, right? So
Uh-huh.
it fits in really well, being able to do online classes. So yeah, I feel really good. I know I'm just starting the bachelor program. So there's going to be a different level of school here, a different level of expectations, but I'm ready
Mhm.
for it. And I'm excited to see what all I can learn.
Well, just for the audience to know, I am also a 903 East Texas origin person. Anyone's got my cell phone number knows it's 903 as well. And also started my college career out at Tyler Junior College, right? So also started as a junior college student, and then moved up to the 4-year university. And the funny thing
Yep.
for me is the way I got into supply chain was I was finishing my associate's degree, and I asked, hey, my this business administration degree sounds really generic. I should probably specialize in
Yeah.
something. And the head of the business department at TGC was like, go check out logistics and maybe check it out at University of North Texas. So I went there, checked it out, and that was literally all it was. It's the only degree program I investigated, the only thing I thought about majoring in, and the only school that I really thought about going to. So it was like, when you talk about kind of like just luck and just having the right
Yeah.
advice and getting just told,
So
pointed
true.
in the right direction, like so much you don't think about that stuff in the
And
moment.
especially early on, right? Because like I think sometimes, like, had I not gotten that promotion in supply chain, I truly don't think I'd be here because I wouldn't have known
Yeah.
about it. And that's another thing, kind of to branch off a little bit, but how you mentioned for voices and people who may not know what they're doing, to kind of point them in the direction of supply chain, it's
Yeah.
fairly elusive, right? Like I
Uh-huh.
know growing up, nobody told me about the effects of the supply chain. I
Hmm.
remember things being out of stock and I never knew why. I
Yeah.
never
Yeah. Yeah.
put two and two together. One of my favorite stories, I tell this in I think every interview I've ever had so far, but it's just about how whenever I was working on the production floor, anytime that the labels, they came in bricks. So anytime they'd kind of stick together, chunk them.
Uh-huh.
I just throw them away.
Yeah.
And because it made my line run bad. And I, like I said, I really had no concept of what was wrong about
Of
that. And then I think
cost.
it was a week later, I had one of our, the raw material planner at the time, he received a promotion. So it's before the promotion, right? He comes onto my line. He's like, you have the highest scrap rate
Uh-huh.
of any line in this entire plant. What are you doing? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm chunking them. And he's like, yeah, don't do that. And that was my first moment where it was like, oh my gosh, these
Hmm.
things have a cause, they have an effect, and every single thing that I do here impacts others. Somebody described it to me once as being a tree, right? You have all these branches that go in all these different directions, and I have to make sure that the impact that they make is good, and that I'm thinking of that impact at all times. So yeah, that was super funny to me to always think back on, is because now 5 years in supply chain, if somebody started, going through my inventory like crazy, I even had it whenever I worked at the contract manufacturer, who's using all these blueberries?
Uh-huh.
What are you doing with all the blueberries? Just to get to see that example of who I used to be,
Yeah, yeah.
I'll probably see it, I'm sure, a ton more times throughout my career.
Question for you, because you seemed, so I'm familiar with the concept of being an MRP. I've had folks been
Yeah.
in charge of that sort of department before. So, and the folks that were working as MRPs were 30 years old, 40 years old, and doing probably about the same job as that you were doing as a 19-year-old. And so in the back of my head, I'm kind of wondering, if you had stayed with the trajectory that you were likely on there at the water bottle plant, I get the feeling you would have been running the place here in a year or two, it sounds like. So it seems like you were probably on a pretty good track already, without a degree. So like, can you kind of talk a little about what what calculus you did, or kind of like what compelled you? I think you might have touched on it a while ago, but was there anything more rigorous, or like any other sort of like calculations or strategic things you did to say like, a degree is really gonna, I'm feeling good, I'm liking this,
Mm.
a degree is really gonna make a big difference? Is there someone that kind of helped mentor you to take that decision, or like, how did that work?
Yeah, yeah. So my most previous manager at the contract manufacturer, shout out to Brandy Ramsey. She was a fantastic mentor, has procurement manager, that's her title and things like that. And she was one of the people who kind of just pulled me aside and was like, I really believe in you. I really believe that you have something special, and I want to see you go as far as you can. You got to get your degree. And I believed her, right? So it's a little bit more of kind of what I've heard growing up my whole life, right? Is to go to school. I'm kind of following one of those paths that is very normal, right? They always tell you to do, but it means something to me because it's like I want to make sure, like I said, I got a really great opportunity early on. I want to make the most of it. I want to have the most opportunity possible. And to me, a degree felt like something that's necessary. I think it's on pretty much every application you could look at. They want a bachelor's degree, and I understand because of the things that I'm learning. Um, as I mentioned before, a lot of them I actually know quite a bit about from working in it. So it makes it easier to kind of go through it, but it makes sense why they're requirements, because had I not known that, of course it could be a hole in my game. So really right now, I'm 5 years into supply chain. I just hit my 5-year anniversary. I'm building my arsenal, right? I'm building up my game plan for the rest of my career. I want to go really far. I want to keep working really hard. And I feel like that there's value in putting in this effort now while I have the ability and while I have the passion for it to just go ahead and get it taken care of.
All right, man. Yeah, you do have you. I envy your speaking style. You're so smooth. Um, so what do you
Thank you.
let's talk a little bit about what you up to today at Fusion Group. We haven't really quite talked about what your job like is today.
Yeah, I mean, right now I feel really grateful. So I work in retail tech, which is really exciting. A lot of it's based on solutions, and for the first time in my career, I'm the customer instead of being the direct manufacturer, right? So I'm the solution, and so I monitor supplier output. I work with a global team, a global company, and I just really have a great space to kind of do my thing while I'm still sharpening my skills. And working for a global company was a really big deal to me. Because I know that's such a huge learning curve sometimes to
Hmm.
speak with people in different cultures and in different time zones and things
Yeah.
like that. It was absolutely one of the reasons why I chose to join the company, because I really wanted to sharpen my skills and be a better global team player.
Awesome. Yeah, you're right. I think it's really valuable to work for a smaller type of outfit and kind of feel what it's
Yeah.
like to work and be a bigger part of a smaller machine. And then I think it's also really valuable to experience what it's like to be a tiny part of a really big machine. And you need
This
both of
is
those, really.
That's such a great point, because my small contract manufacturers where I gained all of my confidence, right? So I mean, those people were fantastic. Like I said, I just feel so grateful in the stepping stones that I've had, because at the very beginning of my career were people who poured into me and gave me all of my mindset, all of my demeanor. I got to use 5S, I got to use Six Sigma, I got to use pillars. before I even knew what it meant, before I even really knew what TQM and total
Uh-huh.
quality management and everything like that, what it actually meant. That got to be ingrained in me from the very beginning of my career. So I can look back on that now and I can be super grateful to Hannah, right? Like, thank you so much for paying attention and
Yeah.
for caring about the things that you were experiencing, because now I can look back on that as actual experiences, actual time that I got to grow. And then I got to grow confidence. I got to grow. I did a lot, especially with procurement. I did do contract negotiation at the contract manufacturer. I did all of the purchasing. I was able to present business cases directly to my CEO, and my CEO gave me direct feedback on, the things that I was working on. And all of that gave me a ton of confidence, and it really built up my ability to feel like that, okay, I think I'm ready to take myself to the next level. So now, like I said, I feel like I'm in the perfect place for me right now. I'm super grateful for everything that I get to learn and just keep going from here.
I think a lot of the folks listening may think, wow, Hannah, full-time student, working full-time. There's no way she has time to do much else.
Well, if you were going to talk about like what I also do tend to add to my plate every week, but I do practice Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So that is a really big part of my work-life balance, is actually competing and training. I try to train 3 to 4 times a week. So that's typically kind of one of those get off work. The classes start at 6:45, so I spend the evening wrestling, pretty much, like getting choked out, choking
Hmm.
other people out. It sounds very aggressive, but it's a very cool sport.
Hmm.
So that is something that I practition, and I've competed probably about 4 or 5 times now, and plan on competing once or twice a year and continually.
That might be a skill that's helpful in negotiations. If it
It
really
is.
if
It
it gets down
is.
to that point, be like, did you know that I'm practice jujitsu? Just want to let you know.
It's crazy how much discipline it, like kind of brings into my normal day-to-day life, right? Because it's a sport that makes you be very patient. So like the average time to make it all the way to the top of the belt ranking, which is a black belt, is an average of 10 years. So some people get there quicker, but the majority of people get there much, much slower. So it's like day in and day out, just your worst, right? But over time, having this growth that you get to see from a bird's eye view. So tying that into life, I'm able to handle hard things
Mhm.
because I consistently give myself hard things to do.
I like
So
it.
so that's a way that I've built myself up.
This thing that I see on your profile now called Pennies Make Change. You talk a little bit more
Yeah.
about that.
Thanks for asking. Absolutely. So, I actually made a post about this. So if anybody here, connects with me on LinkedIn or follows me there, you can kind of see it written out. But it's just something that, as I was reflecting on my 5 years, it honestly popped into my head about what I'm doing actually means to me, and something that I felt encapsulated that perfectly was pennies make change. So whenever you initially think of a dollar, right? It's 100 pennies. And so if you take 100 pennies and you hold them in your hand, you're holding change. So I love the literal aspect of it. But a very consistent theme in negotiation and in supply chain and procurement is about the value of a penny. And so one of my favorite examples that I've learned is the compounding value of a tenth of a penny in negotiation. Because initially, even talking to you right now, it sounds so minute. It sounds like it doesn't make any difference at all. But as it compounds, like I said, I place millions. I've handled at this point in my career about 40 million dollars in spend under my user alone at any given point in time. A tenth of a penny is so many hundreds of thousands of dollars over time whenever you think about it in the bigger picture. So the purpose of pennies make change is just the fact that just because it's small doesn't mean that it doesn't make a ripple effect, that the ripple effect isn't very, very great. So I feel like in a lot of the ways that I've mentioned previously, the things that I do in my job affect my daily life, right? As far as concepts are concerned. So a tenth of a penny in contract negotiation, super important. A very small action in my day-to-day life at a grocery store is very important. These things make up who I am. These things make up the way that I impact the lives of people around me. And I don't ever want to overlook them. I don't want to overlook pennies in negotiation, and I don't want to overlook pennies in my life. I also don't want to overlook the penny that I am in someone else's change, right? In someone
Hmm.
else's handful of change, right? So any action and reaction that I'm able to be a part of, like this podcast, who knows how many pennies this is going to be, right?
At
It's
least two,
exciting to think about.
probably more
At
than two.
least, but at least two, right? I
Yeah,
don't want
yeah.
to overlook these two. I want to make sure that the way that I present myself and the way that I handle every opportunity that the Lord blesses me with in my life, that it means something, and that I hold it to that high standard that I feel like I'm called to do.
Love it. Let's see if you've got, did we turn over every rock and every stone that you were hoping to, or that you could have imagined in this 30 minutes or so? And if not, this is your last opportunity to kind of get any other words of wisdom from Hannah Monk out there into the world before we part ways for today.
Well, I really appreciate it. I probably jumped ahead a little bit with jujitsu, so that would probably be what I would talk about. But ultimately, I mean, I think whenever anyone who speaks to me or anyone who hears what I have to say, I really just want to make sure that you understand how passion makes things so much better, right? Like
Sure.
everything that you do every day has so much more value whenever it's something that means something to you. Whenever you think about water bottles, I can promise you that initially it wouldn't hold that much value at all. But water bottles is where my whole career started. And so that will always excite me forever, and it'll always mean something to me. And I definitely think that it's because I took it seriously from the beginning. And I felt that there was value in every situation that I've been able to contribute to or experience. So definitely, like we said earlier, if we're speaking to high school kids, if we're speaking to people who are just starting out their career, um, supply chain is overlooked. And you can either look at that as a negative, but I don't think it is at all, because it's
Yeah.
also kind of something that if you get into, there's so much opportunity here, and it's so fun. It's so fun to always have something that's changing because it's dynamic and it's active. You're always, I feel like, in the future, right? So my purchase orders are always at a minimum 6 weeks out. They're normally a lot more out. And so it's like, I feel like I'm always in the future. I feel like the years fly by quicker, and I just feel really, really grateful. I mean, the past 5 years have flown, and I can't wait to see where I'll be in the next 5 years, and then even past then.
I'm excited to see where you'll be as well. I'll be here cheering for you and supporting you every way I can. So thanks
Thank
for
you, and
coming
thank you so
on.
much for having me on today.
You're 100% welcome. Thanks for, again, being the guinea pig, being the first future voice of supply chain sort of a chat here, guest. And let's see where this goes. You know, we'll see if we can
Yeah,
make some
sounds
change with
great.
this.
Awesome. Thank you so much.